Welcome back to the deep dive. Ready to dive into some more research?
Absolutely. Always ready to go deep.
Well, today we're tackling Marco Rubio.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, particularly his qualifications and potential impact as Secretary of State.
And
Our listener is especially interested in this from Taiwan's perspective.
got it.
So we'll keep that in mind as we go through all these articles and biographical info they sent.
Makes sense.
Let's get started. Rubio was born in Miami
Okay.
to Cuban immigrant parents.
Right.
That's gotta shape a worldview, right?
It definitely does. But the story is a bit more complex than it seems at first.
Oh, how so?
Well, Rubio often talked about his parents fleeing Castro's Cuba in '59.
Right.
But some deeper research by the Washington Post
Okay.
revealed that they actually immigrated in '56.
Oh, wow. So before Castro.
Yeah, during the Batista regime.
Huh. So not quite the classic, post-revolution exile narrative.
Well,
I imagine that distinction matters in Florida politics.
Absolutely. That exile status carries a lot of political weight. Almost a sense of legitimacy within certain circles. Rubio said his earlier statements were based on, family lore.
I see.
But that difference in timing definitely adds another layer to his background.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how those early experiences growing up in a family that wasn't part of that mass exodus, how that might have shaped his views
Right.
on immigration and foreign policy later on.
It's a great point. It's not just about where you come from, but also when and why.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got this Cuban-American background.
Yeah.
But then there's this other interesting detail. He spent some time as a Mormon.
Yes. From ages 8 to 11, his family lived in Las Vegas and converted to Mormonism.
Wow.
They later returned to Catholicism.
Okay.
But those years must have had some impact.
I would imagine so.
The Mormon emphasis on community and self-reliance
Yeah.
could have resonated with a family facing financial difficulties.
Makes sense.
Remember, his dad was a bartender. His mom worked as a housekeeper.
Right.
Not exactly the image of privilege we often associate with, future politicians.
It's definitely a contrast to the, to that narrative of the wealthy,
Yes.
politically connected upbringing. It makes his political rise even more intriguing.
Yeah.
He went from city commissioner to Florida House Representative in 2000.
Right.
Then, boom, just 6 years later.
Wow.
He's the youngest and first Cuban-American speaker of the Florida House.
That's impressive.
What drove that rapid ascent?
It's a combination of things, ambition, political savvy, and maybe a bit of luck.
Right.
But his 100 ideas approach as speaker really stands out.
What was that?
He basically went on this listening tour across Florida, gathering policy ideas straight from citizens.
Interesting.
It showed a willingness to connect with people on the ground level
Yeah.
and bring fresh perspectives into the political process.
So a blend of populism and pragmatism sounds like a strategy that could work on a national scale.
Right.
But I'm guessing not everyone was thrilled with this rise to power.
You're right. He had some high-profile clashes
Right.
with then-Governor Charlie Crist,
Okay.
who was a more moderate Republican.
I see.
Their battles over expanding casino gambling and climate change policy really highlight Rubio's strong conservative stance.
Got it.
He even sued Christ.
What?
Yeah, for bypassing the legislature in a deal with the Seminole tribe.
No way.
And he won.
Wow. He wasn't afraid to challenge the status quo, even within his own party.
No, he wasn't.
Were there any other controversies during his time in Florida politics?
There was an issue
Okay.
surrounding his use of a GOP credit card
Uh-oh.
for personal expenses.
I see.
While he did reimburse the party and was cleared by the Ethics Commission,
Okay.
it remained a point of contention for some critics.
Got it. So a few bumps in the road.
Yeah,
But he ultimately made it to the U.S. Senate in 2010.
he did.
And wasn't that a particularly dramatic election?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He was up against Charlie Crist, running as an independent,
Wow.
and Democrat Kendrick Meek.
Okay.
It was a tight three-way race.
Yeah.
But Rubio managed to pull off a decisive win with nearly 50% of the vote.
So that victory really put him on the national map.
It did.
Okay, so we've got this fast-rising political star.
Right.
But how did his time in the Senate prepare him for a potential role as Secretary of State?
His Senate years are crucial for understanding his foreign policy views.
Okay.
We need to dig into those details.
Absolutely.
But first, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room.
Okay.
His 2016 presidential run.
Oh, right.
He ultimately suspended his campaign.
Yeah.
But that experience, going head-to-head with the likes of Donald Trump,
Oh,
must
yeah.
have been formative.
It's like a political pressure cooker, right?
Exactly.
You've got to define your stance on every issue, defend it under intense scrutiny,
Right.
and try to appeal to a national audience.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into the meat of his Senate record.
Oh.
What are the must-knows?
His involvement in the Gang of Eight is a great place to start.
Okay, what was that?
It was a bipartisan group of senators
Okay.
working on immigration reform.
Right?
They crafted a bill
Yeah.
aimed at creating a path to citizenship
Hmm.
for undocumented immigrants.
I see.
It seemed like a landmark moment,
Yeah.
a potential solution to a divisive issue.
Yeah.
But then Rubio backtracked on his support for the bill.
Oh, wow. So a political tightrope walk,
Yeah,
trying to balance the demands of his base
right.
with the complexities of a bipartisan compromise.
Exactly.
And this shifting stance on immigration reveals a lot about his political maneuvering and his ability to adapt to changing circumstances.
Definitely.
It also highlights the pressure he faced from different factions within the Republican Party.
Absolutely.
He received high ratings from conservative groups,
He did.
but faced criticism from the Tea Party wing for being too moderate on the issue. So even within his own party, he's had to navigate a complex landscape of opinions.
For sure.
That's a skill that would certainly come in handy as Secretary of State.
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else from his Senate years that we should highlight?
Yes, his voting record.
Okay,
Specifically during his 2016 presidential campaign.
got it.
He missed a significant number of votes while on the campaign trail, which drew criticism
I bet.
from some who questioned his commitment to his Senate duties.
Right.
Others defended his absence, arguing that running for president demanded his full attention.
It's a classic dilemma for ambitious politicians balancing their current responsibilities with
Yeah.
their future aspirations.
For sure.
Okay, so we've covered his early life, his rapid rise through Florida politics, and some key moments from his Senate career.
Right.
But now we need to understand the core of his political beliefs.
Okay.
What are his fundamental stances on the issues that matter most? And perhaps even more importantly, how did he end up navigating this rather complicated relationship with Donald Trump?
Those are the key questions. And to understand those dynamics, we need to delve deeper into his worldview, his ideology, and his approach to foreign policy.
Right.
That's where things get really interesting.
Yeah.
So Rubio is often described as a staunch conservative.
Right.
He opposes abortion, expresses skepticism about climate change science, firmly supports gun rights, and champions free market principles.
Okay, that gives us a broad picture
Yeah.
of his ideological framework.
Yeah.
But how does that translate into action?
Right.
Specifically, thinking back to your expertise on Latin America, how do his views play out in that region?
That's a crucial point,
Yeah.
especially given his Cuban heritage and Florida's deep ties to Latin America.
Right.
Even before this nomination for Secretary of State,
Okay.
he was highly active in shaping policy toward the region.
I see.
During Trump's first term, he was vocal during the Venezuelan crisis, for example,
Uh-huh.
pushing for a hard line against Maduro's regime
Right.
and throwing his support behind Juan Guaido.
So a strong stance against authoritarianism in his own backyard, so to speak.
Yeah, I could say that.
But wouldn't that be at odds with Trump's America First policy, which some argue has strained relations with Latin American countries?
It's an interesting tension.
Yeah.
While Trump often focused on immigration and trade deals,
Right.
taking a more transactional approach,
Okay.
Rubio tends to frame his arguments in terms of promoting democracy and human rights.
So a potential clash of priorities.
Potentially.
Would Rubio moderate Trump's approach, or would he fall in line?
Hard to say.
It seems like he's walked that tightrope before.
Yes, he has. He's both supported and criticized Trump's policies depending on the issue.
Right.
But if he becomes Secretary of State, the stakes are much higher.
Oh, yeah.
They'll be operating on a global stage, and his every move will be scrutinized.
For sure.
The world will be watching to see how he reconciles his own beliefs with the demands of the administration.
And let's not forget that this entire deep dive was sparked by your interest in Taiwan.
Right.
So how might Rubio's background and political views impact U.S. policy towards Taiwan?
Right.
Especially given his hawkish stance towards China.
That's the million-dollar question. And to answer it, we have to consider a few things.
Okay.
First, Rubio has consistently been a vocal supporter of Taiwan and a critic of China's policies.
Okay.
He's advocated for increased arms sales to Taiwan and closer diplomatic ties, even meeting with Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen back in 2016.
So potentially a very strong ally for Taiwan on the international stage.
Yeah, it's possible.
That has to be encouraging from Taiwan's perspective.
It could be, but it also raises a critical question.
What's that?
Will his hawkish stance towards China as Secretary of State escalate tensions in the region?
Right.
China considers Taiwan a breakaway province and has repeatedly threatened to use force if it declares independence.
So any move by Rubio that appears to support Taiwanese independence could be viewed as a major provocation by Beijing.
Exactly.
That's a delicate situation.
Absolutely. And it gets even more complicated when you consider the potential impact on Taiwan itself.
Okay.
Would Rubio's assertive approach strengthen Taiwan's security, or would it make the island more vulnerable by provoking China?
It's a complex equation with no easy answers. It seems like Rubio's actions as Secretary of State could have a ripple effect throughout the entire region.
Potentially.
Impacting the balance of power between the U.S. and China and potentially putting Taiwan right in the middle.
Exactly. And that's why his nomination is such a significant development. It has the potential to reshape the geopolitical landscape in profound ways.
Wow.
To really understand the possibilities. Let's get specific.
Okay.
What concrete actions might Rubio take as Secretary of State that could impact Taiwan?
Okay, let's get into the specifics. What's on the table?
Based on his past statements and actions, there are a few key areas to watch.
Okay.
First, we could see continued and possibly even increased arms sales to Taiwan.
All right.
Rubio has consistently advocated for providing Taiwan with the weapons it needs to defend itself against a potential Chinese attack. He might even push for more advanced weaponry, which would likely anger China.
So a potential escalation of tensions right off the bat, that's a bold move.
It's definitely a risk, but it aligns with his belief that a strong and well-armed Taiwan is essential to deterring Chinese aggression. Second, he could push for even closer diplomatic ties with Taiwan, potentially even moving towards formal diplomatic recognition, despite the risks.
Whoa, that would be a huge shift.
It would.
China considers Taiwan a breakaway province and has threatened to use force if it declares independence.
Right.
Such a move by Rubio would be seen as a major provocation.
It would be a highly controversial move, no doubt.
Yeah.
But Rubio might view it as necessary to counter China's growing influence and show unwavering support for a democratic Taiwan.
It's a high-stakes game of poker, and it seems like Rubio's not afraid to play his cards.
Yeah, he's definitely not risk-averse.
Are there any other potential moves on the table?
He could also increase the U.S. military presence in the region. Conducting more naval exercises and deployments near Taiwan.
I see.
This would send a clear signal of support to Taipei and a warning to Beijing.
But wouldn't that also increase the risk of a military confrontation? It seems like walking a tightrope between deterrence and provocation.
It's a delicate balance. And one that would require careful consideration. Rubio might argue that a stronger U.S. military presence is necessary to deter Chinese adventurism. But it's a gamble, no doubt.
It sounds like Taiwan's fate is hanging in the balance, caught between these two superpowers. Rubio's actions as Secretary of State could significantly impact Taiwan's security and its relationship with both the U.S. and China.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's a complex situation with no easy answers. On the one hand, Rubio's strong support for Taiwan could provide a much-needed boost to its defenses and international standing. But on the other hand, his hawkish approach could increase the risk of conflict with China. Potentially putting Taiwan in a dangerous position.
A potential shield, but also a potential target. It's fascinating how Rubio's personal story, his rise through Florida politics, his battles within his own party, all of these threads weave together to create this incredibly complex and consequential figure. And now he might be on the verge of shaping global events in a profound way.
It's a remarkable journey. And one that underscores the unpredictable nature of politics.
Absolutely.
And the power of individual ambition and conviction.
I think we've laid out a pretty solid foundation for understanding Marco Rubio, his potential impact as Secretary of State, and the implications for Taiwan and the world.